I'm going to share an embarrassing story. My first ever rabbinic gig was at a synagogue in Toronto, or Toronto for the Canadians in the room, called Beth Tikva. I must have just started rabbinical school months earlier. I was brand new, and I was invited as a scholar in residence for a weekend, for a Shabbat. The truth is that the rabbi there, Jared Grover, was actually just doing me a favor, giving me a little experience, an honorarium to help with, rabbinical school tuition, which was daunting. In the end, it turned out that Rabbi Grover became an important friend and mentor to me for years in rabbinical school. But it started like this, that he invited me for a weekend. Anyway, I did some davening. I led some of the prayer services, and I gave a sermon that Saturday morning. And the only thing I remember really from that weekend, but certainly from the sermon that I gave, is I quoted Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, and I didn't know who he was. Embarrassing, right? I gave this sermon. At some point, I said something like, Chief Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, whoever he is, has the coolest title ever. And then I quoted him. Something silly and kind of flippant and totally unlike me, but it keeps me awake when I'm trying to fall asleep at night. Now, some of you may be sitting here thinking, well, I don't know who Rabbi Jonathan Sacks is. And to you I say, that's okay, you're not a rabbi or a rabbinical student. But imagine, being a chef and not knowing who Gordon Ramsay is, or a hockey player and not recognizing the name Gretzky. I'm sure there are other examples, but I was wrong, and I wasn't embarrassed in the moment because I didn't know any better, but I certainly am now. The truth is, Chief Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, Zichrono Livracha, did have a very cool title. As Chief Rabbi of the United Synagogue, he was the spiritual head of the largest synagogue body in the UK. He was knighted by the Queen, made a peer in the House of Lords in 2005, and he had what I think, as far as I know, the best title of any rabbi out there. Maybe something to work towards. But I've been thinking this week about the title of a different religious leader. Not a rabbi, famously not a rabbi, but a cool title nonetheless, which is Your Holiness, or His Holiness. I'm sure I'm not alone this week in thinking about the Pope, both Pope Francis specifically and the role or the office of the Pope, Bigadol, broadly. Pope Francis built and left a legacy of love and kindness, of meeting people where they are at. He advocated for the most vulnerable, and especially, or in particular, those who historically had not been met with compassion by the church. Now, he was not without controversy, and there are religious as well as political stances that he and I differed on, but my understanding, he was a learned and humble leader, and all of us could stand to learn from his teachings. Now, even if he hadn't been all of those things, he still would have been called His Holiness. If he had been hurtful or exclusive or a jerk, if he had preached division or used scripture to cause harm, because the label holiness is a gift automatically bestowed. Upon being elected pope, a person becomes holiness. And this is an interesting juxtaposition to the way the Torah talks about holiness. In our Parsha this week, in fact, in the Maftir that Mia chanted, God speaks to the Israelites and says, "You shall be holy because I am holy. Vitem kedoshim ki kadosh ani." You shall be holy because I am holy. There are two ways we can understand this phrase, "you shall be holy," either as a promise or as a commandment. as a promise, you shall be holy. One day holiness will come to you. Or as a commandment, you shall be holy, as in you must become holy. You must embody holiness, create holiness, increase holiness in the world. Your actions, your speech, the way you carry yourselves should strive towards kedusha, towards holiness. I think that given the context of this verse, surrounded by laws regarding how we treat the world around us as well as each other, the Torah is clear. This is not a promise, it's a call to action. In our tradition, holiness is not a gift automatically bestowed. Unlike the Pope, we are not called holy, we are commanded to be it. Holiness in this sense is not passive. It's a responsibility. It's not something that's just given to us. It's something we have to actively cultivate. And so the question becomes, how? How do we do this? How do we live holiness every day in a way that transforms ourselves as well as the world around us? We embody holiness by showing up with a meal for someone who's going through a hard time. We exemplify holiness by pausing to light candles on Friday evenings, even in a stressful or busy week. We live holiness when we stand up for someone who has been pushed to the periphery, when we give tzedakah, donate to an organization, or give to someone on the street. When we stand up for the ger, the stranger, the newcomer, the immigrant, the outsider, or the misunderstood. Holiness is listening to those we agree with and working to hear those we don't. Holiness is doing the right thing even, perhaps especially, when it's not the easy thing. As Jews, holy is a verb, it's not an adjective. It's an action word. Kedusha, holiness, takes work, dedication, and commitment from each of us. And importantly, it takes each other. Rav Hirsch in our Chumash helps us understand that holiness is not an individual pursuit, rather a collective one. He points out that V'yitem kedoshim, this phrase, you shall be holy, is written in the plural, implying, he writes, that the capacity for holiness is not restricted to spiritually gifted people, but anyone may attain holiness. Holiness is not only for rabbis and cantors or elders or kohanim, the priestly class. It's for everyone. Anyone can attain holiness, and everyone must strive towards it. Rav Hirsch continues, holiness is most easily achieved in the context of community. When a community dedicates itself to the pursuit of holiness, its members support and reinforce each other. The Torah commands us clearly and explicitly, time and time again, to care for our neighbor, to speak up for those with no voice, to support one another, and to lead with compassion. And while we can do some of those things alone, we make bigger strides towards justice, towards peace, towards equality, equity, and safety when we do this important work together. As I was writing this and as I offer it today, I'm thinking about the word pakad. Word pakad, we see it in the Torah as well as in our liturgy. Like in the Amida, we say, God who magen Avraham ufoked Sarah. It's a reference to Genesis. God pakad et Sarah. God took note of Sarah. When she was crying out, praying for a child, God answered her prayers. God took note of her. And later in Genesis, Joseph is dying, and he says to his brothers that God pakod yifkod etchem. God will surely take note of you, bring you out of Egypt towards the promised land. The connection is this V'yitem kedoshim, this phrase, this commandment, you shall be holy, is at its core a reminder, lifkod, to take note, to reorient ourselves towards other people. because humans are fundamentally interdependent, and the mitzvot, the obligations which the Torah expresses time and time again, remind us of this. We need each other. You shall be holy because I am holy, says God. Rabbi Aaron Leib Smokler explains that while God's holiness is static, it's simply a fact of God's existence that God is holy, the holiness of the Jewish people is an altogether different project. She writes, it is just that, a project, a task of a lifetime, something that is ever on the horizon of possibility. We are commanded to be holy because God is holy. When we pursue peace, when we advocate justice, when we create sacred space in the world around us, we participate in this project. Holiness in our tradition is not a gift automatically bestowed. It's not a title granted by hierarchy or status. And unlike the Pope, we are not called holy by others. Rather, we are each called to become holy. Our rabbis often spoke of the difference between being holy in the sense of being set apart, and being holy in the sense of being a partner with God in the work of making the world a better place. And we each are called to that same work, partnering with God, showing up for each other, fighting for justice, spreading compassion. In doing so, Kedoshim Nihya, we shall be holy. Shabbat Shalom. We'll continue with Musaf back in our Sidurim, beginning on page 155 and going into the Amida on 156b.